Welcome to Movie Slice. Quick, fun recaps of your favorite movies. Sharp, funny, and to the point. Hit subscribe and get your perfect slice of cinema. At a high school in the United States, Eddie, a lonely young nerd, is on his way to detention. However, when he gets there, he meets Janet, a cheerleader he's in love with, but who is standing next to Brad, her boyfriend, and his best friend Jimmy. Seeing her, Eddie tries to talk to the girl, and Brad, who often bothers him at school, tells him to leave and breaks his glasses. The young man is then forced to go and sit at the back of the room, but soon grabs his toolkit from his backpack and fixes his glasses. Also on his way to detention is Ash, a skateboarder who sells illicit substances to Jimmy. The next inmate to arrive is Willow, a young goth girl and Eddie's best friend who has an obsession with zombie movies. In addition to them, a young man called Mark is also in detention, but he doesn't seem to be feeling very well. Ash decides to talk to him to see what's going on and maybe sell some of his merchandise. Meanwhile, the teacher who will be taking care of the students in detention, Mrs. Rumbles, has just arrived. Eddie goes to her to ask if this punishment will be recorded on his transcript, as he fears it could jeopardize his admission to Harvard University. However, the conversation is soon interrupted when Ash realizes that Mark is injured. The young man says that he was bitten by a homeless man in the street, and when he shows him the wound, his hand seems to be deteriorating and swelling enormously. Mark begins to have a seizure in front of everyone, and in a matter of seconds, his skin turns pale and his mouth is covered in a lick. Mrs. Rumbles rushes over to help him, but Mark lunges at her and bites her on the neck. All the students gather to help the teacher, and seeing that Mark doesn't want to let go of her, they pull him hard and throw him against the sink. The blow hits the young man in the neck, and he falls unconscious to the floor, while the teacher is seriously injured. To stop the bleeding, Willow takes a piece of Janet's uniform, even against her will. At the same time, Brad leaves the room to call for help and discovers that, like Mark, more students are infected and devouring each other. It doesn't take long for Eddie and Willow to realize that their favorite zombie movies have come true. Eddie then suggests staying in the room and hiding, but Mark gets up, puts his neck in place, and advances towards the group, forcing everyone to flee. Even though they know that Mrs. Rumbles will also become a zombie, Eddie and Willow decide to take her along, and they all make their way through the school corridors. After passing several hungry zombies, they find the office and try to call for help, but everyone is out of range. All that's left to do is lock the doors to prevent the monsters from getting in, and Eddie goes to check if the principal is in his classroom. However, when he enters, all he finds are his pieces hanging from the ceiling fan. Seeing that they won't be able to call for help, Brad gathers his colleagues and decides that the group should hide somewhere safe. Eddie suggests that they all head for the library in the corridor, as no one in the school apart from him usually goes there, and the bookshelves could serve as a barricade. Everyone supports the idea, and one by one, they leave the office. But near the library door, there are two zombies devouring the body of a student. Eddie says that the monsters only look at what's in front of them, and if they don't draw attention to themselves, they can safely pass by them. Brad finds the explanation convincing, and, to put it into practice, he orders Eddie to be the first to pass the zombies. Fearing for his life, the young man obeys and walks slowly past the zombie duo, who are too busy with their snacks. Fortunately, he manages to slip past unnoticed, but Ash gets too excited and congratulates his colleague loudly. This soon attracts the attention of the zombies in the corridor, and they begin to surround the group, who have nowhere to run. To everyone's surprise, Eddie starts banging on the lockers, so that the noise attracts the monster's attention. The plan works, and with the zombies walking towards him, the rest of the group manages to get into the library. Now, all that's left is for Eddie, who, feeling more confident, jumps under the pair of zombies and makes it safely to the other side. Willow is impressed by her friend's courage, and with everyone inside the library, they put everything they can find in front of the door to act as a barricade. After that, Mrs. Rumbles needs to be treated, as her infection is getting worse and worse. Willow asks Janet to stop the bleeding from her neck, while she goes to talk to Eddie about a solution. The teacher, however, can't resist her injuries, and her heart stops beating. Janet tries to give her a heart massage to revive her, but the teacher doesn't react, and her mouth is covered with the slime that appeared on Mark just before he turned into a zombie. Even so, the girl intends to give the teacher mouth-to-mouth, who has already become a zombie and is just waiting to devour the girl. Luckily for Janet, Eddie realizes what she is about to do and, at the last second, pushes her away from the zombie. Afterwards, the young nerd expects the girl to recognize his heroic act, but instead she thinks it was Brad who saved her. Despite his disappointment, Eddie pulls himself together, and everyone gathers around the table to hold the teacher, who has now become a creature hungry for human flesh. In the middle of the confusion, Brad feels that he's hurt his hand, and Eddie asks if he's been bitten, but his colleague replies that he's only dislocated his finger. Willow then warns them that the only way to eliminate a zombie is to destroy its brain, and Ash comes up with the idea of using a paper guillotine. Then everyone pushes the teacher against the blade, and Ash strikes several blows to her neck until he finishes Mrs. Rumbles off. The zombie's body remains immobile, but since Ash didn't destroy her brain, the teacher's head is still alive. Hours pass, and the group is forced to wait in the library, while outside, an army of zombies awaits them. To make matters worse, Brad goes to check the wound on his finger, revealing that he has indeed been bitten by the teacher, and now it's only a matter of time before he becomes infected. Still, he keeps it a secret and asks the rest of the group what to do now. Eddie and Willow warn them that the best thing to do is to stay in the library, because in zombie movies, it's never a good idea to come out of hiding. Even so, Brad suggests looking for something that might help them survive, and the group splits up in the search. Unfortunately for Jimmy, while he was distracted by one of the books, a zombie librarian appears behind him and bites his throat. His colleagues hear the noise and run to help him, pulling the zombie away from him. Next, they try to grab something they can use as a weapon, but as there are only books around, they have to throw them all to stop the creature. Meanwhile, Brad tries to help his friend, but the wound to his neck is serious, and Jimmy soon loses consciousness. Enraged, Brad sees a flag on the shelf, so he breaks the pole in half and uses it to hit the zombie librarian in the head, eliminating her for good. The confrontation is over, but they still have to decide what to do with Jimmy, as he will soon turn. However, knowing his fate, he decides to end it all and throws himself out of the window, attracting all the zombies who begin to devour him. After this tragedy, the group tries to stay calm and hide their presence inside the library. Again, Brad goes to check the wound and the infection is spreading to his arm, but he still leaves his hand hidden inside his jacket. As for Janet, she can't contain her nervousness about the situation and panics. So, to help her calm down, Ash makes an exception and decides to release his merchandise free of charge to his colleagues. Everyone accepts except Eddie, because he warns them that in horror movies, characters who use illicit substances are usually the first victims. Even so, seeing that everyone is trying to relax in this moment of crisis, Eddie also accepts and doesn't like it one bit. Despite this, everyone is amused to see the young nerd step out of his comfort zone and enjoy this little moment of relaxation together. Ash then takes the opportunity to ask what Eddie, Brad, and Janet were doing in detention, and the couple say they were caught in an embarrassing moment in the bathroom. Everyone starts laughing at the situation, but Janet says she can't stand the fact that she's constantly being judged for being popular. On hearing this, Eddie takes pity on the girl and also reveals that he has been caught for carrying an illegal drug in his backpack. The young man confesses that he took it so that he could study and get a place at Harvard, but when Mrs. Rumbles found out, she put him in detention. With this punishment, his place at the university was ruined, and in the midst of his despair, he showed that he had also brought a gun in his backpack. Finally, Eddie says that he wants to survive the zombie apocalypse, but that the group will only be able to do so if they overcome their differences and help each other. However, his speech is interrupted by Willow, who hears a noise coming from the other side of the wall and calls the others to investigate. The five of them go there and hear the sound of punches, as if someone was trying to get into the library. Suddenly, a zombie hand comes through the wall and Janet screams in desperation until she is grabbed by the creature. However, Eddie once again rushes to her aid, and with the help of a book, he manages to hit the zombie, forcing it to let go of the girl. This time, Janet realizes that it was the young nerd who saved her, and thanks him with a hug. Eddie is happy about this, but his joy is short when the hand reaches through again and grabs him. Eddie is then pulled against the wall, and the group gathers around to try and save him, but there's no way the hand will let go. Finally, Janet and Willow get together to push a book cart, and with it, the two manage to remove the zombie's arm. Even so, the hand is still firmly attached to Eddie, and Ash rushes over to help him, with the two of them pushing together until they finally free Eddie from the zombie arm. After this bizarre situation, the group continues to wait in the library, but looking through the crack in the door, Eddie realizes that the situation is getting worse. From the number of zombies in the corridor, he deduces that if the creatures gather to go through the door, the barricade will only last a few seconds. The young man then tries to keep his mind off things, and to do so, he begins to admire Janet's beauty. Willow, who has always considered him more than a friend, asks what he sees in Janet and realizes that Eddie doesn't really love her. He just wants to be with her for her beauty and popularity. What's more, she makes him realize that, in his attempt to feel special in front of others, he ends up not valuing himself. These words make Eddie see a side of Willow that he had never appreciated before. Because of this, the young man promises that if they survive the zombie apocalypse, he will ask her out on a date, and Willow readily accepts. This moment of closeness between the two friends ends up being interrupted by Ash, who says he needs to go to the bathroom. Eddie doesn't think it's a good idea to leave now, but seeing that the zombies are increasing in number, Willow agrees to try her luck outside. As the main exit is blocked, the girl shows them the ventilation shaft in the library, which has enough room for everyone to pass through. The group seems to agree with the idea of escaping, except for Janet, who refuses to leave the library and face the zombies. She asks Brad to stay with her, but knowing that his wound is getting worse, he refuses and prefers to leave, hoping to find a cure. Willow then calls everyone to follow her into the ventilation duct, but to her surprise, Eddie refuses too. This attitude hurts the girl, but she decides to carry on, along with Ash and Brad. In the library, only Eddie and Janet are left, with the girl seeming to try to get closer to the young nerd. The two of them try to relax sitting at the table, and he asks why Janet has never gone out with someone like him. The young woman replies that popular cheerleaders like her only go out with the jocks and wouldn't be seen with guys like him. Eddie is offended by this response and realizes that Janet has nothing in common with him, just as Willow tried to warn him. Meanwhile, the young woman follows the ventilation pipe, using a lighter to see in the dark. Then she hears a strange noise coming from one of the pipes and, to her horror, finds a huge zombie rat. Desperate, she tells everyone to move back, only for their weight to cause the ventilation pipe to give way and the three of them to fall into the corridor. Luckily, there are no zombies around, but after recovering from the fall, Ash realizes that his merchandise has been left inside the pipe. He then asks Brad to help him reach the duct, and there he finds his product. But next to it is the terrible zombie rat. The man is then torn apart by the creature, leaving only his legs, which fall out of the ventilation duct. The problem is that this attracts the attention of the zombies, who begin to surround Willow and Brad on all sides. With no other choice, the pair take Ash's legs and use them as a makeshift weapon, striking the zombies that cross their path. Back in the library, Eddie's harsh words about Janet's personality make the girl change her view of him. Then, realizing that the world is about to end, she decides to give the young man a chance to have a romantic moment before they are both eliminated. However, the couple are soon interrupted by Willow and Brad, who have been forced back into the library and are trying to open the door. Even knowing the risk, Eddie and Janet rush to remove the barricade, and their friends manage to get in. However, the zombies now know where they're hiding. The creatures gather at the door and try to force their way through, leaving only a few seconds for them to enter. Eddie tries to think of a solution, but Janet still wants to have her romantic moment in the zombie apocalypse and pulls the young man into the next room, even against his will. Willow ends up alone with Brad, but his infection has already spread to his arm and reached his nervous system. Thanks to this, the young man is turning into a zombie and begins to take out the reinforcements at the barricade. Willow then runs into the other room to talk to Eddie and finds him and Janet together. Although she doesn't like it at all, she tells him that Brad is infected and that they need to block the passage of the zombies before it's too late. The three of them then find Brad already transformed into a monster, and Willow and Eddie leave Janet to face him while they try to close the door. The girl despairs at seeing her ex-boyfriend turned into a zombie and hesitates to attack him, but to motivate her, Eddie and Willow start making up stories about him. They say that Brad was cheating on her with other cheerleaders, and this becomes reason enough for Janet to confront him. She picks up a chair and uses it to hit Brad, but seeing that this isn't enough, she picks up a piece of wood, hits Brad in the chest, and pushes him out of the window. After that, she sets off to help Eddie and Willow close the door, but even so, the blockade won't hold for long. Eddie tries to think of a solution, and seeing Ash's skateboard, the broken chairs, and Professor Rumble's head, he assembles a makeshift vehicle. With that, the three of them go through the door and collide with the horde of zombies. On one side, Eddie uses his pistol to put an end to the creatures, while on the other, Willow arms herself with the library flag and strikes the beast right in the head. The escape plan is going well, but as they approach the stairs, the car overturns and the three of them are thrown between the steps. Just then, the zombie versions of Ash, Jimmy, and Brad appear and set out to attack their friends. Willow manages to get rid of Ash and pulls a razor out of her boot to hit Jimmy in the head, saving Eddie. Finally, it's time to help Janet, who is being attacked by Brad. But Willow removes a stake stuck in his chest and hits him on the head, making the zombie fall unconscious to the ground. The three of them have managed to escape, but there are still dozens of zombies around the school, and the gun is low on bullets. Even so, the only alternative now is to run toward the gymnasium and, from there, take the ladder that leads to the roof. The trio then run through the monsters and reach the entrance to the gym, but the door is locked. Willow rushes to unlock it, but Eddie realizes that there won't be time to escape, so he decides to face the zombies and give the two a chance to survive. Gathering all his courage, Eddie hands the pistol to Willow and says that it made him realize who he really wants to be with. This makes Willow happy, and she orders Eddie to come back safe as he still owes her a date. The young man accepts and, armed with a baseball bat, starts hitting all the zombies that come his way. During the confrontation, he ends up losing the bat, but soon finds some pencils scattered around the staircase and uses them to hit the monsters in the head. Finally, there's a zombie holding a clarinet, but Eddie easily defeats her, using the musical instrument to hit her on the head. The young nerd manages to leave a trail of zombies on the ground, but he soon hears a scream coming from the gym and runs to see what's happened. Unfortunately, while the two girls were climbing the ladder leading to the roof, a zombie cheerleader managed to bite Janet's foot. Willow manages to free her from the creature by shooting it with her pistol, and then the two girls climb the ladder and reach the roof. Despite this, they both know that Janet will not survive, and there is only one bullet left in the gun. Janet asks Willow to eliminate her because she doesn't want to turn into a zombie, and even though she's reluctant, the girl takes the gun and aims it at her colleague. However, before pulling the trigger, Eddie also climbs the stairs and reunites with Willow. The problem is that one of the zombies has followed him and is running towards the couple, but just then, Willow fires her last bullet and hits the zombie in the head, eliminating it. But then Brad appears and starts running towards his friends. Without bullets or any other weapon to defend themselves, all seems lost for Eddie and Willow. But then, Janet uses her last strength and throws herself and her ex-boyfriend off the roof. Thanks to their sacrifice, the two friends have survived. But it won't be long before the zombies reach the roof. Fortunately, several military cars begin to appear, and the American army uses its heavy weaponry to eliminate all the zombies and bring the situation under control. Eddie and Willow are very relieved about this, and soon come down from the roof, being the only survivors in the school. The couple then prepare to go on their first date, and Eddie, now aware that he has always liked Willow, kisses her in front of everyone. Everything seems to have ended well, but after the kiss, Janet, now a zombie, appears next to the couple and knocks Eddie to the ground. Willow is unable to react and gunshots are heard, leaving it unclear whether the young nerd was infected or even survived to go on his first date. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps.